By watching or listening to this show, you are acknowledging that you are of legal age to consume cannabis in your region. This product is for adults only.
Hi, Sandy. How are you?
I'm good. So I just can I might want to eat or drink while we're talking. Is that okay?
I'm okay with that. You totally. And you're welcome to turn off your camera if you want privacy. But I am recording this visually too to put on my blog. So
Okay.
I just want to make sure I'm telling you that so I don't catch you off guard.
Right.
I am recording this for the purpose of sharing it for educational purposes. Do you allow me to record your voice and view?
Yes, you can record me.
Awesome. Thank you, Sandy. Now I'm just going to close my little side panel here so it doesn't pop up with little things all the time when I'm talking. And I have in the background here just my room, my green room, like my company, the Green Generation Company. I'm inspired by the color green. So I have my lovely friend here, Tegan, is recording some background footage for our behind the scenes stuff too. So we're all inclusive because I'm really trying to capture this story, not just yours, but the whole project and what that's all about, which I'll share with you is the truth on cannabis, which is we're using cannabis as a theme. As opposed to as a thing that anything else is with. And there's Tegan right there. She's going to do some pictures. And she has green hair too, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Isn't that great? So
Yeah.
The project, The Truth on Cannabis, what this is about is we want to explore how different people have landed in the cannabis industry in various ways and what brought them there. And want to know more about them as a person and their story and where they came from and what they did before. And really, it's just a thread of theme that helps people, connects people from different ways. And the stories that I've done so far have been incredibly interesting and very diverse. And the coolest part about this is that most people, or not everyone, started off using the plant in any meaningful way. And mostly they were highly stigmatized against it, which is super cool because part of my goal at the Green Generation Company is to help people learn more about, sort of what it is to be interacting with this plant that doesn't have a stigma around it. I actually just said with Tegan in our previous meeting, we're both moms with little children, and we want to raise our kids in a world where stigma around cannabis isn't a thing. It's like they just know it's part of their life. So that's why I wanted to introduce and talk to you, because it's essentially you've been sort of dragged into this industry, whether you like it or not, and talk about that. And that's really why I wanted to thank you and honor you in that way.
Thank you. That's nice. I've been dragged in. It's true.
So yeah, and I got a chance to quickly tell you a little bit about why I was doing this, but what we talked about initially when we were speaking when I was in Vancouver actually opened up an entire other lens to look at this project around, which is essentially how people have sort of moved around stigma their entire lives. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the plant. So that's actually another piece that we spoke about child rearing. And that actually, I think that's how at least how I reached out to you initially back in, I think it was 2017, was because how we're connected through my mom. and that story, I guess, is, I don't know that story very well, at least how you guys met. So I kind of want to ask you, how did you meet my mom? Do you remember initially back in the day? Because she has a story that she told me, but I don't know if that's real or not.
I really want to know what you said. I feel like it might have been Hadassah. I wonder, did she say that?
Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, good. That's right. She did say that you guys met at, I think it was the Mahar chapter. She doesn't let me forget the words for sake of my Hebrew. But
I forgot that was the name. Now, they started this chapter in Vancouver for like young people because they were desperate to get some young people. And somehow, I don't know how my mother was in Hadassah. So I guess that's how I got in. And she was there. Right.
Yeah. So I think the funny thing about that concept of like, oh, your mother did it, so your mother dragged you kicking and screaming to these meetings. Like I remember going as a child in Calgary with my baba, Tybee, and she would have these massive parties, like these tea parties with like tons of food and, over the top, right? And my mom would tell me that she started her own, or they were part of this new chapter in Vancouver. And do you remember those meetings? Do you remember if it was like over the top or if it was like more like just moms hanging out with their kids kind of thing?
wasn't over the top. I think we met, I remember having them at my house though. I think we used to just, it was an excuse to, meet other people roughly our age and just hang out, right? So that was, and we used to go to people's, I remember going to different people's houses and we used to have them at night, I think, but they weren't over the top. It was like, coffee and a little bit of snack, not much.
And that totally. So, and like now I feel like in my generation, we have like the parents and pishers club, like at the JCC, like we all sit together with our kids playing on the play mats, and the mom theme was really the strongest one. That's what kept people together, whether we're part of the chapter or not. And I think that's why to this day I'm talking to you, because there's no more. Is there a Mahar chapter? Is that still a thing? Do they still get to? Yeah. So. But the theme that continued was this, friendship amongst women of common age. And so that's essentially the piece where this was interesting for me, and essentially what brought me to what we called I would say that I called it the lesser known secret about your son. This is the piece that I'm very curious to know if it's actually true. And this is something my mom used to say to us. And again, it's all around the stigma of the time. So when you were having kids are in the early 80s, so you're about around my mom's obviously the same time. At that time, bottle breast dichotomy, I think, was probably all the rage. So what was it leading towards then? Do you remember what the prevailing thought was?
Well, did your mother tell you about this or not? I was like in La Leche League, which is like the breastfeeding support group. And I became a La Leche League leader. So I was 100 billion breast. And I taught breastfeeding for like 10 years. And I breastfed my children until they were like 4 years old.
That's it. That was what she told us.
I had a bad reputation for that.
And it's very much on vogue now. I mean, I don't know about the age, but the breastfeeding, breast is best was what was nailed into my head from when I had my daughter. But that's something that has changed over time in terms of stigma. Again, like really strong beliefs that people held towards this very important thing. So my mom, and I think you guys were sort of in this circle doing what they thought was best for their kids, while society around them was saying bottle, 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 or something else, or like what was the prevailing thought at the time? I don't even know.
Well, I think the prevailing thought was breastfeeding. I think everybody wanted to breastfeed. I think I don't think people were so into bottle feeding. I think people gave up. The problem is when people had trouble breastfeeding, and still do, they give up after 3 weeks. They give up too easily, in my opinion. But no, I don't think that I was weird in insisting on breastfeeding, but it was more for me the length of time that I breastfed. That no one breastfed past maybe 6 or 8 months, maybe 12. I went on for years, like 4 years, and some people were like disgusted by it.
Yeah, I think I think that's still true. I mean, now I think predominantly I know people in my genre age group that are doing it till 2. Like 2 is sort of like like my sister's breastfeeding in Israel. Her kids are not quite 2. So that I think that's sort of the new number ? But the giving up too easy, 100%. So this is actually why this is my transition point into how we talk about cannabis is as a child. Go ahead.
Yeah, what we're gonna say. I want to know.
Yeah. So it's what piqued my interest around how this is going to connect together was when we had our earlier conversation, and you had a son. I think Seth and I are about 18 months apart. Not even. Like, when was he born?
April 15th, 1982. Oh,
it's his birthday tomorrow. There you go. Yeah. Tomorrow's April 15th. There you go. So exactly. I'm January 13th, 1983. So we were like 9 months apart, basically.
Right.
And what my mom did with us, which I think is what we should be doing more of, is focusing on what's best for their own children, and that mentality. So when we talked earlier, and you were saying about like how he was a tough kid. He was a tough baby. Yeah. So tell me a bit more about him as a child. And I think there's a lot of people that can relate to that.
So I had a daughter first. My daughter's 3 years older. She was, maybe also because she was a girl, but she was easier in a lot of ways. She was not an easy child. She was just a little, in some ways she was easier, and in some ways he was easier. But it was different. So he was acting different than her. But when he was 2 or 3, he would have like really bad tantrums. He would just decide he wanted like cream cheese in the car or something. And he would like have like a 15-minute huge tantrum, or he would decide he just wanted something. And it was like, it just wasn't possible to give him what he wanted. It was a huge tantrum. And he didn't sleep well. He woke up every hour and a half, couldn't breathe. His, like, if you're going to talk about parenting, his poos were like mushy. They weren't formed as the way they're supposed to be. He also had night terrors, and he would wake up at night. Sometimes he didn't know where he was, or
How old was he around? Like, was this like the toddler or post like early school?
Let me think. Like 3, 4, 4-ish. He could talk.
Yeah. So post-verbal, but preschool.
Right.
So as a parent in that time, like what did you do? Like what was the talk around the Mahar chapter group? What did you do?
Oh, well, I don't know if I would, a lot of the people in that group, I don't think I would have discussed it with, because they were more, I don't know how to put it. They just weren't as alternative as I was. And they might have just gone down the road of drugs, or taking them to the doctor and drugging them or something. I don't know. I probably wouldn't have discussed it too much. I would talk more to my La Leche League kind of friends, who are more into maybe alternative ways of dealing with it. But I don't know how. Somehow I learned about a doctor, and his name is Stephen Gislason, and you can still get a book by him. And I went to him, and he was alternative. And I think I knew someone who had a similar problem. I'm not sure how I found him. And he said, basically it's the food. And his body is not tolerating the food. So you're like putting his immune system is like overworking. And he has, that's why he's having, it's like if you would have way too much caffeine, that feeling you would have like 4 times as much as you should have, and you're like, I don't know what's
fuzzy,
wrong.
like really, like your body's grating inside.
Everything's going, you feel crappy. So it'd be like that maybe. And so he had us take him off basically everything: wheat, sugar, yeast, dairy. Basically ate, like he didn't eat bananas. He ate things made out of rice. Could be anything made of rice. Rice was one. Yams, but not potatoes. Chicken or turkey. Pears, but not apples. Not bananas. He could have some cooked carrots, I think. I don't even know what he ate, but he somehow managed for 3 weeks.
Okay. Well, you did the elimination portion.
Everything, we took away everything.
Yeah.
And after 3 weeks, he literally was a different person. He was sleeping longer. He could breathe, because at night he'd kind of wake up and go,
right, like sleep apnea, like a child.
Yeah. So he was breathing. Mm-hmm. His poo changed to like how it's supposed to be. He didn't have any more tantrums. He was completely different. So you could notice it. Then, so he said, what is the thing that he would want to have first? It was like bread or banana or something. So he had like one thing, mm-hmm. and you could notice right away. He pretty much kind of went back to where he was. So like, you kind of that. And then, well, you could have some bread, and then something else happened. You could have cheese, something else happened. Sugar is never good. Maybe some vegetables were added in, but so we saw that it was very worthwhile. Also, I guess the other reason I knew he kind of wouldn't sit still.
Right.
Ever. And I knew that if he was going to be going to school soon, he would not do well in school if the teacher was going to consider him a problem, because he wouldn't sit still.
Totally. Yeah.
He would end up Ritalin.
Right.
I knew that. And so this changed him, and he felt it. And that was just the way it was. We just used to say he's allergic. It was just the easiest way to, and he knew he actually technically wasn't allergic. He wouldn't die if he ate it.
Right.
It was better if he didn't.
This is amazing.
I'm sure I know many other children who might have ADD or ADHD, who, if you actually would do this, like I've told so many parents, just do it for 3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks is the answer.
It will probably change your child, and if it doesn't work, fine. But it's really worth trying if your child has like problems. Anyway, it did change him. Yeah.
So did he choose to eat? Does he still eat like that? Like, does he still have those issues, or did he grow out of it at some point?
That you grow out of it, but you actually don't grow out of it. What happens is you handle it in a different way. People who have what they call allergic shiners, like under their eyes, like sort of a dark thing under their eyes. That's from eating dairy, probably. Like, they say that things are, you just deal with it better. So he ate like that till he was like 14, say. And then he would, go to a friend's house and have pizza or something, or ice cream. And he would know it made him feel bad.
Right.
But that's it. By that time, he just knew he'd feel bad.
Right. So he was making an intentional decision to enjoy his time with his friends with pizza, or, know that it's deal with the stomachache later kind of thing. Right.
Right. Even now, he's asked me, he said, do you still have that diet? So I found it and I sent him again. And so basically he kind of eats like that anyway. He knows what happens if he has like a lot of dairy or bread. And or sugar. And he eats like 99% of his meals are super healthy right now.
So I'm curious, like, from your recollection of his teenage years, like the 14 time. So I think I went to Camp Antiqueville with Evan around the same time. And one summer, we were there the same summer. And I didn't really know him because he was a sit, in the cabins on the lake there that I never got to go to because I was a kaklat. So, but I remember that time being like, obviously the freedom time. Like, you're 14, we were at that time, that young time where you could kind of do whatever you wanted. And do you feel that maybe, like, when did cannabis come into his life? And I know he's talked about it, but I want to know from your perspective, if you noticed.
No, I didn't know. We didn't know. I think we found it in his backpack, like at the last day of school of either grade 8 or grade 9. It might have been grade 8. And we were like surprised. So no.
So would you say that, I'm curious about this for my own personal comparison of people in my life, that their use of cannabis keeps them stable and normal as opposed to makes them different. Would you agree that about your own son, about Seth?
Yeah.
So this is the cool thing, is that I think there has been so much, and this is essentially a keystone to my education piece around this, is that some people need something maybe isn't as strong as other things, or isn't as contrived or chemically determined, but to most people really that use it from a long-term basis, it doesn't make them crazy, it makes them normal.
Right. No, I agree. I think that's exactly what it's done for him. It made him be able to function. Like, if you see what he does on a normal day, it's he's working like a good 10 hours a day. He's super productive. He can multitask. He goes from one thing to another. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
It's quite amazing to watch. It's probably because of that he can focus. No.
100%. So this is me as well. Like, I literally, I multitask, manage so many things in a day because I'm medicating with CBD tea. So this is my tea in a cup that's just, liquid, but I just dose all day as opposed to stopping and taking a break. But it was very much later in my life where I realized that I needed that. It was before that I was taking drugs and, also different kinds of things, managing a boatload, but recognizing that if I didn't take the drugs, maybe I just needed something simple or not at all. And so that's what I'm wondering from your perspective is, seeing someone like your son who's become very successful with the cannabis stuff, like the branding and his personal branding. And he talks about it in the way that it's normal, it's made him functioning and does all these things, but it's also been of the butt, he's the butt and creates the butt of every joke. Like from a mother's perspective, how do you see that?
I didn't. It's interesting because lately he's, been really talking about cannabis because he's got the company, and also because he just recently wrote a book that's coming out. To be honest, Mark and I don't think we realized how much he was smoking from like age 13 on. Right? He's right here. No, we had no
idea.
It normalizes his behavior, so we didn't know. So maybe he never
like acted like high.
Yeah, he didn't act what we would call high, but yeah, we really had no idea how much and how often he was smoking.
So and I think his acting persona, like Seth's acting caricature of himself in acting mode, became a character that was really just I'm thinking of it more like it was an exaggeration of what the stigma or the stereotype was of people like he was supposed to be, I guess. It's almost like he went the opposite way, but because he did that, now it's becoming more normal. You know what I mean? Like it's becoming more normal in our society and legal, obviously. So I think it's awesome. Like, I mean, that's one of the reasons why he's in my generation. I mean, like I said, we're the same generation. And we're so much the same generation that I wrote this piece and I haven't finished it yet. So I'm curious what you think about this as well is, what would it be if Seth Rogen, Mark Zuckerberg were in the same bar mitzvah class together?
Right. That'd be interesting.
Wouldn't that be interesting? Yeah. we might have a different outcome of the world right now, like if that was the case. Seconds groaning. What do you think about that, Sandy? How would the world be different if Mark and Seth were in the same bar mitzvah class together?
Funnier. The world might be funnier.
The world might be funnier. They could take a joke a little bit better, right?
I don't know. I don't know. Mark and I we're pretty shocked about how much he was smoking. We really were. But and I'm not upset about it. We didn't know and we were surprised. So and you kind of feel like a little bit of the failure. Like, don't you think you should know that about your teenage child? How much, like what drugs they're taking and how much? You want to know that.
Well, yeah, but kind of here's what my thought is. So for my personal experience with my own mother, who you know very well, when I was 14, I had an unfortunate traumatic event happen in my life where I lost my father. So at the exact same time as Seth was 14, I was experiencing extreme personal trauma. And how we dealt with that at the time was my mom tried to normalize our life, keep our routine and everything that we were doing as constant as possible, which huge dibs for her was very hard to do, first of all. And second of all, she allowed for some things such as having a party in the house with all of the grade 8s and grade 9s entirely in the house. And she was the parent supervising everybody so that we could she would buy the alcohol for us and she would allow the drugs to happen, cannabis only, because she was there present and supervising. And she wasn't part of the party. Like, it's not like she was joining with us, but she was the adult responsible and she could take that role and know it and be responsible for 30 kids, which is very counter to everyone else's belief on parents and, that kind of situation, at least at the time.
Your mother did a really good job. And I agree with that. I think it keeps kids safe. And I think that's a good way to do. Yeah. If you're the parent, they can come to. We used to always say, if it doesn't matter what you're doing or what you did, you can call us anytime. I won't, judge you. We'll just pick you up, and we picked them up, both of them, from all kinds of crazy places.
Yeah, you create that trust spot, right? So they say, doesn't, we'll deal with it later, but we want to make sure that you're okay. And as a parent, that's important. And
Yeah.
that's so hard to do when the society says, don't do this, don't do that, don't let your kids do this, it's all bad. You're a criminal from you're 14 and go do something else that's going to put, like, you know. So what I'm honoring my mother is that even though her intuition was kind of counterculture at that time, it was very much needed for society to do that, so that the people in the room, or that were, you know, allowed to feel that way, like yourselves, allowed their children to become who, like, functioning adults, I guess, and not in the criminal system.
Well, we used to say he'll either be an artist or he'll be in jail, but you know.
Well, I think he picked the former, or the first one.
Well,
that's awesome. I love it. I love it. Now, let's fast forward to now. So you're still obviously his mother, but what's your life like now in where you are?
What's my life like?
Like, are you still parenting him or others?
Do you ever stop? I don't know. We're
That's
Jewish.
a good answer. Yeah. No, you don't ever stop, right? It's like either it's your own kids or your grandkids or your brother's kids. So that's
just have to do it more subtly, but I don't think you ever stop. No, I think that we are, you know, our daughter's married and has 2 boys who are 8 and 10 now, and we still sometimes suggest you might do as a parent or not do, or whatever. And then with Seth, I mean, sometimes they need help because they're kind of lame about things.
so
I can't give any examples, but yes, I think
Even like giving their staff off for
Thanksgiving.
right.
You
Give them a break.
he might not think that other people
You hear
should have a day off.
They don't get a Saturday off. Oh, that's an abnormal thing to have a day off work, is what he's saying. So that he says remind them to give a day off. Is that what he's saying?
Well, it was just when we were there for American Thanksgiving, and she normally comes on that Thursday and Friday, and everyone has a holiday. And we said, maybe she doesn't need to come on Thursday and Friday because it's a holiday. You're going to pay her anyway. You're going to pay her. We know that. Maybe she doesn't need to come because it's a holiday for people. Oh, okay. Like,
So what's he's married now, right? I don't know his wife. Who's he married to?
Wife is Lauren. They're a very good match. She was brought up in New York and Florida, and then she went to fashion school, then she went to film school, and after film school she went to Los Angeles to intern, and she was at a party. I think they were both at the same party or dinner or birthday or something, and they met, and he asked her out, and they went mini golfing. And then on the way home from mini golf on the freeway in Los Angeles, a car, well, when you're driving and a car comes behind you and it touches the corner of your car, it causes their car
to spin out.
Spin around on the freeway, like across. And they were just lucky that absolutely nothing happened to them.
Wow.
But they freaked out. And so we took her home, and they were both nervous wrecks. And then later, like a few days later, he told me that happened. And, of course, he didn't tell me right away because he knew I'd freak out. And I said, well, this girl, either you're going to marry her or you'll never see her again. After that.
You just so black and white, Sandy. It's like he's either it's like one or the other. He's a criminal or he's an artist. He's going to marry her.
Well, with that situation, that's going to happen, I decided. Anyway, so I was right. But they're like the perfect match. She's acted in some movies, she's written some, she's directed one, she's gonna be directing another. Their happiest times is when they're sitting on the couch watching TV, eating like chicken wings, and that's
Doing their pottery.
or now they're doing a lot of pottery together. But and she's artistic. Like Seth has always been artistic. Drawing or painting, creating things, and she is too, which is interesting. But they're very well suited, actually. And she's very nice. She's great.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
mom,
They've been married
blessing.
10 years.
They've been married for 10 years?
Yeah.
They've been together
And they've been together like
15 or 16.
15 probably.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So that's like, it's about me. Stan and I have been together for 14, been married for 14 and together for almost 20.
Yeah.
Actually, last month was 19 years.
That's great.
So a couple more questions that I want to ask you about your perception of how your life or his life has changed now. So you talked a bit about how you didn't really know about the stuff going on when he was a kid with the cannabis, but in terms of his rise to fame being about his acting, his his bringing to light, like now, like the opening up the door to success while using cannabis. What do you think about that?
Well, there's still a stigma associated with it because, you know, he would go on all these talk shows, I mean, even recently, and tell a story about smoking pot or getting high or this happened when I got high. And there'd always be a story. And, you know, we would be like, do you have to always talk about the drugs? Like, is that, does it always have to be about that? And apparently it does. But, we were kind of getting annoyed with it, actually, to be honest.
I hear you. You found it was like the central part to his presence in the public, right?
Too much of an identification. And also because a lot of younger people look up to him, and I just didn't think that, you know, not everyone needs to smoke pot, and some
Everyone can get away with it.
right, and it might be illegal some places. So I mean, I don't want younger people to think that is a goal in life, you know, just as something to do.
100%. But so here's the part that's super cool about the situation is that you saw cannabis as a way to make it's therapy for him, some sort of intake that was therapeutic, because you identified as a child that he had something that wasn't necessarily diagnosed, but he needed something to help him with his normalization. And as you did it with food when he was a child, and then as he got control of it himself, he was using cannabis in some way to medicate and then make his life more interesting because there was always a funny story around it.
Right.
So how I see this as a equal in age, so the same generation piece, and having gone through the life in the same way, the key thing about maybe how our paths diverged, I guess, in some way, is that I got into the medical system because my mother said I had to see a doctor. So back to that Machar stigma, that group, my mom was a member of Pride and Caring, that you had to see the best doctors. We're going to get you to the best doctors doing the best medicine and the best clinics. So unfortunately or fortunately, however you take that to me was the divergence for myself. At the same time, when he was using it therapeutically, and I was too, I also got to see a doctor, and they said, stop using it. We're going to give you these, which are pills to take.
Right.
So unfortunately, I think a lot more people have gone down that here's a pill route, and getting off that is almost impossible, if not impossible.
Right.
And that's
awesome.
Well, that brings me to my next point, is when I reached out to you in 2017, you were with my mom at the fireworks show. So she sent us a picture with you guys at the Vancouver fireworks with that other lady with the cool glasses. Yeah. And I got that photo when I was inside the psych ward in Calgary.
Yeah.
And at that time, I remember it like it was yesterday because it's very much a part of my life now. I was there because I was trying to get off medication, which was incredibly harmful. I'd been on it for a long time, but I was experiencing these side effects, which were way more detrimental to my health than anyone understood. And I essentially tapered off of the medication as per doctor's orders, but had this very wicked withdrawal syndrome situation that rendered me cognitively, physically, and mentally impaired indefinitely. So I unfortunately did not succeed in getting off of the drugs and was forced to go back on them. Because of that, I was in the system essentially. And even though, and this is the other cool part, I was, at that time when that happened, that was 2017. So medical cannabis was legal. My doctor was the first prescribing physician of medical cannabis in Alberta. I had all of the best medical cannabis money could possibly buy, and a prescription to take all of it that I needed. And she was a psychiatrist. She was the attending physician to this situation. And those rights of mine and hers were revoked as soon as I self-admitted to a hospital for just observation.
Too bad.
It is too, unfortunately, this is how my career started in this industry, as I fortunately lived through that.
Right.
Barely. There was many times where it would not have gone well. And essentially one of my coping mechanisms, because at the time I recognized that this was probably something to do with coming off the drugs. It was some sort of withdrawal. And they were saying cannabis was making it worse, even though it wasn't. It was just helping me treat it. But I used my connection to your son as a diffusion in a psych ward so I could survive. Because those places are kind of like prisons. You don't know who's on your side and who's not on your side. So we watch movies all day. There's nothing to do there other than, they don't have therapy or anything. They just make you sit around and wait for the doctor to show up every couple of days. And we would watch your son's movies. Like I had some people have them there. They were sitting around, and watching funny movies is a great way to sort of do nothing for pass the time, right? And I would drop these things in conversation with complete strangers that were on some other cocktail of medication in the same setting to diffuse a very uncomfortable long-term, indefinitely long-term scenario. So I would say something like, hey, there's Seth Rogen. Hey, I know his mom. I know a funny secret about him. And that's how the story of that lesser known secret piece came up repeatedly for me. It was a way to unite people that have otherwise nothing in common other than a very tragic situation that they find themselves in a neutral way, was with comedy and an identifying icon on the screen. So that's how I did it, was I lived through that setting. Unfortunately, I'm still on like a little stuff, but getting better. And using cannabis intentionally, therapeutically dosing, trying to keep track of dosing, which is almost impossible. Because I do believe it is a much better way to function and to be without the physiological effects of some of that medication that isn't intended, like the side effects.
Right. I agree totally. I agree. Yeah, I agree. I do know one person, one of Seth's friends anyway, it doesn't matter who, but he has some a lot of anxiety issues, and he does use cannabis, but he finds when he gets to a certain point, it gets him like really paranoid. It goes sort of over the top, like it calms him, and then it starts to do really bad
peaks.
And
yeah.
It's happened like in a cycle, like a few times, which I find interesting.
So that's the medical side. So that's the from what I've learned, same thing. I've had similar situations, and it depends on the strain and the cannabis and how good quality and what the profile, the terpene and the cannabinoid profile. So I've learned that since then. Like I've gone to doing education. I'm talking to doctors that are studying the endocannabinoid system. And I've even had something really cool called an epigenetics test, which I'm trying to get other people to do, because it maps your entire body from a gene perspective on what's good for nutrition, supplements, and cannabis. And it literally maps your endocannabinoid system, and it can inform you on the pieces that you're more sensitive to. So food allergies would come out in that without a blood test. It's like a genetic test. And there's Stanford University is doing a lot of research around this about epigenetics. And so I fortunately had the ability to have that test done. So I know the foods that make me not only intolerant or allergic or sensitive, but also the pharmacological stuff, and which cannabis strains or terpene strains, more like the terpenes, that are your better, you have better receptors are better for, and which parts of the body that's in. So that to me was like the golden ticket. Like here I have a map of my body that tells me which parts need more support than others. And it's not a common medical practice. I had to pay a lot of money to have that done, but that's a science that is emerging that will help people that do have those extreme reactions, because they aren't taking the right thing. And that's the science and therapy that I'm working with other people now, with finding that out and making it more commercially available.
Okay, I think that's amazing. I'd like to know more about that, actually.
Epigenetics, yeah. There's a program.
Then we're gonna go.
Yeah, I have one more question for you, and then we're gonna wrap up here. And that's, do you and Mark use cannabis?
No. Mark has never had cannabis accidentally.
What's that?
Like, story. And he was eating things from Seth's fridge and he accidentally ate a brownie, having never smoked pot before.
Okay, and how did he do on that, Mark? How did that go for you? How was that smoking or eating a brownie from Seth's fridge?
Huh?
If it wasn't in a car, it wouldn't have been so
He
bad.
was
He's in a car.
the car, and then he realized he couldn't drive. He was like, Sandy, you need to drive now. I don't feel well. We didn't know it. We didn't know that he'd eaten that. Oh, okay, I'll drive. And he was like huddled in the corner. And then we called Seth and we said, your father ate something from your fridge. And he was like, oh, shouldn't have eaten that. And it was like a whole, he couldn't drive for 3 days.
Yep, I have been in that situation myself. Fortunately surrounded by people that I could trust and not have to freak out or drive. But yeah, that's actually a big problem, is that people take too much and they don't know what that is. They don't know how much is too much. It's very hard to measure the edible portion in people's food. They're in the internal part of your body digests it differently than if you smoke it. The inhalation and the metabolism is very different for different types of methods for taking it in. Very interesting.
Didn't know that. Well, he didn't know that's what it was, but we did learn that. We learned that. Yeah, so, it was a big.
So that was his lesson on not eating things from Seth's fridge that he doesn't know. That's hilarious. So finally, to wrap it all up, obviously, thank you so much for this time. I want to know what your future if your future forward looks like. Like, what does the world look like from Sandy Rogen's eyes now that your Seth is leading it in some capacity?
My world or everyone else's
The world. Like, what's the future outlook of the world as you see it?
I don't know. It's a bit scary. I don't know. I think that, this is like a lame thing. I think we're just wearing masks for years, but aside from that, I don't know. I think there's a lot of hope and a lot of wonderful things that are happening. Like even people having birthday parties and you have, rather than the one you would have had, you have like a Zoom birthday party and relatives from all over the world are at your birthday. And that would never have happened before. You wouldn't have had contact with all those people for your little at-home birthday party. So in one sense, there's a lot more contact with people who you wouldn't have. And I think that's really neat. But the whole world in general, I could stay awake worrying about it quite a bit right now. I think people are starving, people don't have enough money, people are sick.
So let's frame it into your world, Vancouver, Canada. We're in a place where cannabis is legal. Our government is giving us a minimum income to live. We have lots of resources. We're fairly in the functionally non-dependent mode overall.
Right.
We're doing all right.
We're doing okay.
Do we have
mostly
hope? Do you have hope for my mother?
I have for your mother. Of course, I have hope. Why wouldn't I have hope for your mother? Your mother's amazing because I just think she's one of the neatest people because she's just so strong. She just tells it like it is. She's blunt. She says what she thinks. And basically then she doesn't give a shit after that. And I just love that. I love it. And she's just so honest. About who she is.
Honesty.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Authenticity in a good way.
Right. Yeah, and she's also really nice. So people, maybe we just need to be more honest and more just nice to each other. But my world's
an honest way, right?
My world's wonderful. So I feel slightly guilty how nice it is. So.
Well, I think we should be thankful and grateful that we're alive.
We should all be grateful for what we have.
Yeah.
And share what we have with others. And I don't know. I'm not coming up with anything really, I can't think of the word, but
revolutionary. No, you know what though, Sandy? The honest and authentic part about this is you're honest and authentic, and that's what people need to see. You just told me a story that a lot of people need to hear. about being true to yourself and your children, following your gut, not judging. Like I think a lot of the stigma thing is a judgment, you know, I have to judge others. And that's a big part we're trying to break down, is stop judging people, just be nice. And actually that was a big message. And back to my little story about being in the hospital situation, I treated everyone as an equal, like look them in the eye, say hi, and authentically say hi, like smile. Like whether you're in a shitty place or not, it's not that hard to smile.
Right.
And that's how I utilized a long time in a place that's very not fun,
Right.
to get through it. And that's the story that I'm hoping to one day tell. Maybe your son will be part of the production team and we'll bring that to fruition. I do have a manuscript, but it's a very funny story of survival in a super hard place that some people don't get through. And this world is just getting more like that. There's more and more hard things that we have to deal with, and doing it with a smile and being authentic. And like you just said it, that's the message. It doesn't need, some people need cannabis, some people don't, but you said it, it doesn't need much. Just be you.
Good for you too, you know, and telling your story.
I love it. I think the stories of ourselves need to be told by us, not by someone else. That's the key thing. So
Great.
I really appreciate your time, and Mark as well. Thank you so much. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you soon.
Okay. Take care. Thank you. If you want to talk more another time, I can. I just have to go now.
No problem. Yeah, no problem. We'll follow up again soon.
Okay. Bye.
I'll definitely share this with you once I post it. You'll be able to see it and share it with anyone you want.
Thank you. I'll get my hand on it. Jeez. So crappy on this. I hate it. Anyway, thank you.
Bye.